Marquis de Lafayette, a champion for human rights in modern America. Imagine stepping into a time machine and traveling back to the 18th century, where a French aristocrat named Marquis de Lafayette was fighting with George Washington in the American Revolution. His commitment to liberty and equality popularized him then, and if he were alive today, those same principles would drive him to confront some of the biggest human rights challenges in today's society. Lafayette's legacy is all about freedom. He was a huge part of the American Revolution, and the values that inspired him, like liberty, justice, and equality for everyone, no matter their background, came from the French Enlightenment. He wasn't just a soldier, he became a symbol of those ideas. He fought against tyranny in all its forms and worked to help build a democratic system. And if we look at the world today, it's easy to see how Lafayette's legacy still connects to what's going on now. In today's America, Lafayette would probably be right there fighting for civil rights, standing up for the freedom and dignity of every person, especially those who are often overlooked or marginalized. Think about some of the biggest issues of our time: racial justice, gender equality, LGBTQ+ rights, and economic inequality. If Lafayette were around today, these are definitely the types of causes he'd be involved in. Take racial injustice, for example. With all the talk about police brutality, systemic racism, and the fight for equal rights, Lafayette's sense of fairness would make him support movements like Black Lives Matter. He'd be pushing for equal rights under the law and fighting against the discrimination that still exists in our systems. Back in his day, he fought against British oppression of the colonists. Today, he'd probably be fighting against the kind of oppression we face within our own systems, calling for reforms and justice. Lafayette would also be passionate about gender equality. He was part of a revolution that was all about breaking free from unfair systems, so it makes sense that he'd be pushing for women's rights today. Whether it's closing the gender pay gap, stopping gender-based violence, or making sure reproductive rights are protected, Lafayette would stand up for all of that. He believed in equality, and he'd see gender equality as a natural extension of the freedom And Lafayette would definitely be an advocate for the LGBTQ+ community. Back in the 18th century, basic rights like freedom of expression and equality before the law were still just ideas. Today, Lafayette would probably be out there fighting for the rights of LGBTQ+ individuals, especially with some of those rights still under threat. He'd believe that everyone, no matter their sexual orientation or gender identity, deserves the same. In a world that's still struggling with inequality and injustice, Lafayette's legacy would still be a major source of inspiration. From fighting for racial justice to gender equality, Lafayette would be pushing for the rights of all people. His life wasn't just about winning wars, it was about making sure liberty and equality were for everyone. And in a lot of ways, the fight he started is still going on today. Lafayette's values would continue to guide anyone still fighting for justice and fairness in the world.
So, even though Lafayette lived in the 18th century, his impact is still super relevant. His fight for human rights and equality is something that people can still look to today as a model for how to keep pushing for a better, more equal world.